And today I'm with NAACP President for San Antonio, Dr. Gregory Hudspeth. How are you doing today, Dr. Hudspeth?
I am doing very, very well. Thank you. Thank you for
Well, uh,
inviting me on today.
well, welcome to TAN TV. This is where we have a local reach with a global feel, and I'm honored to
Mhm.
be able to take part in what we call the power of the vote. Last week, we had the opportunity to introduce and talk to the person who's running against you, Jay Maurice Gibbs.
Mhm.
And today, uh, you as the president of the NAACP San Antonio have a lot to say. I do want to jump in and ask you, how do you feel? And this is a softball, but in a lot of our political races around the country, we're hearing this black and brown type of advocacy. But does black and brown, the term, the phrase, actually provide results for African Americans or black people in politics? Because we use so much. But again, from your perspective, what do you make out of the black and brown phraseology?
Well, the phraseology isn't problematic for me. What is problematic is that we will have these challenges that we've had. There are many, many cases in which we've worked together. One of the challenges you have sometimes is that we find ourselves fighting over the same crumbs, if you will. And there has to be this attitude that those crumbs are going to be there, but we have to learn how to share and work together, and to promote each other. That we have many of the same challenges. One of the challenge programs that we're able to work with LULAC right now is that LULAC here in San Antonio would like to change the name of Sidney Lanier High School.
Okay.
And their effort with changing the name Sidney Lanier is that Sidney Lanier was a Confederate, and many of his points, his poetry, was negative to African Americans, and so we will, we agree with them on that, and they're looking at this the same way we looked at Robert E. Lee, and changing the name of Robert E. Lee. Do the same thing with Sidney Lanier. Uh, we, I think, this is an issue we need to continue to work on, and we continue to suggest that we have similar goals, and what we need to do is be able to control the rhetoric and control the anger that exists sometimes, and to control the desire to want it all. That we need to lock arms, and not just with Hispanics, but with whites with similar views of as ours. In NAACP, we like to say we don't have permanent friends or permanent enemies. We have permanent issues. And so if we
Okay.
can identify the issues, then that's a good thing to work on.
Well, one of our permanent issues, and I don't know if it's an NAACP platform issue,
Just
is
a
this.
second.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm getting an interruption here. I'm sorry, what you need to do?
Okay, you're working here, right?
Right. Just give me a few minutes working in
Okay,
here.
no,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
I'm so sorry about the work going on around here. I'm sorry about that.
Well, we know you're working,
Well, okay. Okay.
so that's good.
Yeah.
But one of the issues that the Black community has had for a long time has been this question about reparations. Like, reparations has been one of the campaign issues at the national level. Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor of Georgia, just recently talked about reparations, and she said that she was in favor for reparation Black people, but she also threw in the word indigenous. She also thought the indigenous populations were also deserving of reparations. But after further review of that, our Native American or our indigenous populations receive treaties. African Americans have never had a treaty, have never received money from the government as a group that has been harmed by slavery. So, what are your thoughts on that, Dr.
Yeah.
Hudspeth?
Yeah. I'm not sure the formula we would use and how we would make that happen. I think one of the things and concerns we ought to have is that we know that as African Americans, by and large, we find ourselves on the lower end economically, we find ourselves on the lower end socially, we find ourselves on the lower end politically. And you hear the hammer behind me. I'm sorry for that. And so, how do we resolve that? What can we do? Well, one of the things we can do is that we can provide the appropriate educational opportunities for people of color. And so I would love to see, I think we ought to give more money and more resources to HBCUs. There has to be an issue with getting our students, our young people into the HBCUs. Education is a great equalizer. And
Okay.
if we can improve the educational level, improve the opportunities for individuals, and I specifically speak to the HBCUs because I want institutions that are sensitive to the needs of African Americans. One of the best things that happened to me was that I attended an HBCU. And that HBCU gave me a sense of identity and also indicated my ability to convince me that I could be successful. And I wasn't just one of the numbers. And I think a lot of times when we go to the majority institutions, that's where we find ourselves. So that's the reparations I see, giving us the opportunity to get the same level of education, same quality of education as others have received, and putting monies in people's pockets that way. James Brown had said, I don't want anybody to give me anything, just open the door, I'll get it myself. And that's really what I think, where I think African Americans are. Open the door, they can do it themselves.
Okay. So with that being said, if education is very important, as we know, and also thank you for making it known that you did attend an HBCU. You can shout it out on TAN. Don't be ashamed, because this is our network. Again, we have an opportunity to talk also to the younger generation. So, Dr. Usman, what impacts have you made to make our younger generation want to be a part of the NAACP?
One of the things we've done is that we created a committee called, hopefully you can hear me, the Committee of Young Adults. And this committee, we're one of only 3 branches in the state of Texas with a young adult committee. I've heard some folks say, well, we need to bring more youth into the NAACP. That truly is not a mission of the adult branch. We cannot bring youth in. Our Constitution does not permit us to do that. What our Constitution permits us to do is to work with our youth council. We have a youth council here in San Antonio. We can work with a youth council, but regrettably, we can't bring them into our branch. They have their own separate identity. So what we do with the youth council is that we provide them with assistance, we provide them with funding.
Okay.
But what we want to do is bring more people into the branch who are 25 years or older, because that's where between 25 and 40 years of age, that's the population of young adults that we're trying to attract. We are also working with several of the colleges, universities in the area. So we have an NAACP chapter at UTSA. There's another one coming in at Incarnate University of the Incarnate Word, and the Alamo colleges will get one as well. So our goal is to take those students and transition them over into our adult branch. But
Okay.
I hear this discussion on youth. That's not something that we can do.
Okay, but for younger adults, that's something that you can focus on. And then I'm also going to dovetail into, there was Dr. LaTronda Harris put it into the chat. St. Philip's, right there in the NAACP's backyard in San Antonio, is an HBCU. So how are we producing our best there? And how does the NAACP support St. Philip's in producing the very best there?
Yeah. We work with St. Philip's, and not just with the NAACP, but with the Divine Nine as well. And so we have co-programs that we will do at St. Philip's College with the various Greek letter fraternities and sororities. What we will do is meet with work with the administration of St. Philip's. Dr. William Lawson is a big supporter of ours. And so we work with St. Philip's trying to sorry for the banging. It was distracting. I'm sorry. But trying to get them to. There's this discussion on critical race theory.
Okay.
And what we do with St. Philip's and other institutions is try to explain what critical race theory is and what it isn't. It is not something that's designed to have one group to feel badly about their ancestors, but there's an effort to ensure that everyone understands history and what occurred, understands slavery.
That kind of goes back to that other question about. Also goes back to the other question of reparations. I mean, look, people don't want to feel bad in this day and age. Everything seems like you can be offended, but the longest offense has been for those who actually labored and actually gave their very lives that were, as you know, raped, hung, just terrorized, and we have to hold back in terms of wanting to have true opportunity and freedom in America. And it just seems as though the political talk is, no, we don't want to offend anybody. Everyone should be treated with kids' gloves. But is that really possible, Dr. Hudspeth? I mean,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. If it offends you that I tell the truth, then so be it. You'll be offended by the truth. And so we tell the truth. We talk about what happened to African Americans. There's not one of us, because of what happened during slavery, that we don't have some white blood in us, because our women were raped. Our women were abused during the Civil War. Now, the question becomes, we know that occurs. We need to ensure that it's being taught, that it isn't being forgotten. The issue is, how do we fix it? Or what fixes should be there in order to alleviate those? And I go back to education again, because I think that is the huge fix, trying to ensure that individuals are able to get the appropriate education they need to understand critical race theory. We don't teach critical race theory in the elementary and the high schools. It's a theory, and the theory is that from being African American, by being African American, there are some things that occur to me that did not occur to other populations. We simply need to understand that it did occur. Now, that's not to make you feel badly that it occurred. It occurred. But the question becomes now, what do we do about it? How do we address those issues?
So, Dr. Hudspeth, so again, looking at the future, who are we voting for? I see that from another person who chimed in. When we're talking about the African-American vote, the power of vote, how should we be thinking about what African-Americans are doing at the polls? I mean, this is the power of the vote. This is important. So what are we telling our members to do?
We're telling our members the importance of voting. We register people to vote by the thousands or the tens of thousands, but we get into the polls by the hundreds. That we need to improve. Politicians are always responsive to those individuals who vote. Politicians are when we look at what politicians are doing, don't think Joe Biden or any of these other politicians are doing things out of the goodness of their heart. What they're doing is that they're doing it because we vote. And they know that when we don't vote, that they do not do well. Our real challenge right now is with the African-American male voter. Where the African-American male is not voting in the numbers that he should vote. And so the question is, how do you change that?
Well, but Dr. Hudspeth, is it, how do we change that, or what are we saying to Black men like myself that is so enticing that makes us say, I got to go vote? Because if we don't hit the nail on the head to say that Black men are disconnected because they don't see anything tangible coming out of the politicians who need our vote, then it's a hard sell to say we got to change necessarily our technique. And again, this is one of those areas where I've struggled, because I've seen so many people now who say that you go out and vote, but they can't tell us why we should vote.
I think one of the things when we vote, do not look for instant gratification in the vote. You may not see that. What sometimes when we vote against other things happening. I'm watching right now, and I'll get back to your question on that. We're watching right now the influx of Jim Crow laws coming back. So if I have someone who's asking me for my vote would be important for two reasons. Number one, what I may get out of that person, but number two, and possibly more importantly, what we can stop others from doing. Donald Trump was in office for 4 years, appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, and they've turned the world upside down, those 3 justices. They're now, even one that was appointed before him, Clarence Thomas, is now talking about overturning the affirmative action laws for the colleges and universities, the affirmative action opportunities. So I argue to suggest everyone who looks like me is not necessarily my brother. And so we need to deal with those things and ensure that we have the president that's in place that will make the appropriate appointments to the Supreme Court. We need to ensure we have the Senate that's in place to give the appropriate confirmation of those Supreme Court justices that have been recommended. That is important to us. And so when we say, well, I don't see what they're doing for us, gee whiz, just look around us and what has occurred and what continues to occur. And those things we can stop from occurring because we got to the polls to vote. It's when we don't get to the polls to vote that we have a problem.
Okay.
So the incentive sometimes is not the instant gratification that we would all like to have. It may be something in which we can stop the officials from doing things that are harmful to us.
So I guess I would just go back then to say, within our local NAACPs, and how long have you been the branch president?
3.5 years.
Okay. So during the 3.5 years, what are some of the top issues in which you've been leading in San Antonio that you feel makes it really compelling for your membership to vote you back into office?
We watched nationally cases like George Floyd and other cases where African Americans were stopped by the police, or whereas Aubrey, where they're not just stopped by the police, but where they're killed through interaction with police officers or with citizens. So one of the things we have done is that a couple of things. We're developing, and it's in the progress, we should have that completed soon, a film that will show African American males what they need to do when stopped by the police. A police stop should not be a death penalty. We're doing this in conjunction with the San Antonio Police Department. So they're working with us on this. We work with the San Antonio Police Officers Association. One of the things we want to do is to stop Black people from being killed by police doing a stop. So that's one of the things we're working on. Another thing we're working on is that we know that for a lot of Blacks, they have minor offenses, but because of that minor offense, they cannot get jobs, or they have problems getting apartments, or various issues, because each time they fill out an application, they need to put on that application that they are a convicted felon. President Obama has decided that he wanted to remove all penalties for small marijuana use, where all these people were arrested for having marijuana. What we've done here in San Antonio is that we have an expungement program that we've put in place.
I saw your letter that you sent. Yes.
Yeah, in which what we want to do is people with these type of convictions, they can come to us and we will help help them expunge their records, get their records cleared, so that they will be able to move forward with their lives. For me, that's significant. That's a major move on our part.
So I guess, so as you know, all African Americans don't have criminal history or problems. So what is the NAACP doing to encourage those who, are in business for themselves? Maybe they don't have anything to do with a criminal past. And so what are the types of issues in terms of, I know I addressed last time with Jay Maurice was this gentrification that's happening in the Black community, and what is the NAACP doing about gentrification and really managing it, because you can't stop it, but managing it so that you can save the history, you can save the people who want to stay, and you can enable them to have a better quality of life all at the same time. What's the NAACP's position on that?
Right. I'm chair of the NAACP State Housing Committee. And so one of the things we're doing on the state level, we will do it on the local level as well. And that is, we want to freeze the taxes of those individuals who are in a historical home. And because there's gentrification in their community, we want to freeze their taxes so that their taxes will not go up, increase because of the properties around them. We want to discourage the developers from coming in and building these homes that are really just another type of these straight lines. They're homes in which individuals are purchasing and moving into that will be part of a slummy environment, if you will, at some point in the near future. So how do we save historical houses and renovate those houses so that individuals can move into those houses without moving into some of these other type of poorly constructed homes that are being built? Working with the city of San Antonio, one of the things the city has done is that the city has a program that will work and help folks with rehabilitation of their homes. And so we are working to try to get that word out, that those grants are available for people so that they can stay in their homes and they can improve their homes, or you can have a historical neighborhood in which the homes can be improved and folks will not sell to these other developers that are coming in. That's a challenge for us, because you cannot stop the gentrification from taking place because of location.
Well, if you look at Austin, Texas, Austin was probably the first community that actually went through gentrification at such an alarming rate. I mean, if you go to the east side of Austin today, you will not find African Americans or Black people. It's just the way and manner in which that gentrification happens, almost like COVID-19 just wiped out plenty of people. I see in San Antonio, maybe you have that same observation, that the suburb rural-ish areas like Converse, like Cibolo, like Schertz, like Universal City, like Live Oak, those are the cities that actually gained the Black populations. And now San Antonio, in the traditional areas of the east side, they're not there. So what do you do now to bring those African Americans back and bring them back so that they can actually be a benefit, a blessing to slowing and stopping this gentrification?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't say I have an answer for that. I think what has happened in Converse and Live Oak and many of these other communities, that we fought for years and years and years to give people the right to buy a home and build a home in any community where they wanted to build. And so now that's occurring. With a population of 7% or so of the general population, the African American population in San Antonio is very small. So are you going to be able to preserve, let's say, the east side as an African American neighborhood? You will be able to you have a hub there in which you will be able to have African Americans in those neighborhoods. But the African Americans are going to live throughout the community. And I'm not sure we want to dissuade that. What we want to do, however, is to ensure that African Americans are able to maintain their voting blocks. And so when you look at that politically, what we want to do then is to ensure that there are neighborhoods which African Americans can move into and which they can have a significant impact on the decisions that are made by those communities within those communities. Will that be communities surrounding St. Philip's College? Possibly not. Possibly not. But we need to ensure that African Americans, that the opportunity for African Americans to live in a community in which they have political power, that remains, that we're able to protect that as much as we can.
So, Dr. Hudspeth, with that being said, so I guess the problem is, and so as you know, the city of San Antonio is the 7th largest city, United States of America. It has a very diverse population. We just had the NAACP, who had its annual meeting convention there, and now we're in the position to perhaps we will not see an elected African American Black person be able to represent within the city. So I think this is kind of troubling for Mayor Nurnberg. From many standpoints, because we celebrate diversity, we celebrate the equity and inclusion, but yet this vote and the demographics of our population looks like is going to shift. And so then what do you say when we see an elected office at City Hall that does not include an African American? What does the NAACP do at that point?
Obviously, diversity is important to all of us. And I think, Art Hall was able to get elected outside of a traditional African-American community.
Yes, he was. He was in D8, I think he was.
Right, right. And so you'll have some of that happening. When we talk about Live Oak and University City and those areas, they have their own city councils, if you will. And so that's not very beneficial to the African-American community within the city of San Antonio in District 2. We need to ensure that when individuals move outside of the East Side, that they're moving outside the East Side by choice and not out of necessity. And in other words, we need to ensure that the appropriate housing is there on the East Side. We need to ensure that the appropriate entertainment is there on the East Side. We need to ensure that there's the appropriate restaurants on the East Side for individuals. And so my thoughts are, if we can maintain the business communities, if we can maintain the entertainment community, the entertainment opportunities, that the East Side will continue to grow. But that's the issue for us. How do you keep things that are pro-life on the East Side? We'll build something like the AT&T Center, and the AT&T Center, where we said, well, that was a huge investment for the city of San Antonio. Yeah. I'm not sure he did very much for Black people.
No, that was a deal that was done to basically say that we're going to house the San Antonio Spurs there, and it was a deal in which many of the elected officials of the past signed off on that were of African American background, and the promises that were made by Bexar County never came to fruition. So yeah, you make a great point.
We were naive. It was a naivete on our part to believe that. You look at any community where these type of stadiums have been built in the African American community, they've never benefited the African American community.
Well, the traffic patterns after any San Antonio Spurs game leads people directly out of the community, directly back to the highway. So there's no spending of any type of money that the NBA fans would actually be able to pour into that district. So I get it.
Let's go back and add one other thing. But if you had those fine dining restaurants near the AT&T Center, if we had the entertainment hubs near the AT&T Center, some of that may change. And so that becomes a challenge that we will have. And so that's part of what we would look at in our economic development for the east side of San Antonio.
Okay, so let me just ask you this, because we're getting close to the end of our time. How is your relationship with the current councilman? Is he being productive in helping to serve the needs of the NAACP? Councilman Jalen.
Yeah, we have not had that relationship with the current council person.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then just to go back to your election, I know that the treasurer is running against you, but what favorable comment would you make about him today that talks about his work ethic, and if he does replace you, how should we all respond to that?
One of the things I want to do is to the branch, the NAACP is very important to me. Mm-hmm. It's part of my history, and I think it's part of our future. What I don't want to do is to get into any type of negative campaigning. Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's in the best interest of the NAACP. Mm-hmm. Yes. What I would suggest to you is that being president of the NAACP is not an honorary position. Vince Lombardi, I think, said it best. He said, the only place where you find success coming before work is in the dictionary. Hmm. And what I would suggest to you is that I'm a workaholic. And I'd rather say positive things about my work ethics rather than saying negative things about someone else's work ethics. I don't think that that's beneficial to the NAACP. One of the slogans we have in the NAACP, and we actually borrowed this slogan from the labor union, and that is, when we fight, we win. But what we've done is that we have a tag on that we've added to that, is that when we fight, we win, but not when we're fighting among ourselves. That's not a winning solution. What I would suggest is that if you look at the improvements that we've made at the NAACP since I've become president, we now have some opportunities that we have not had. I don't like talking about the treasury. When I became president, we had a treasury, about $56,000. We now have almost $250,000 that we've been able to pull together. What this does for us is that it gives us an opportunity to put some of that money back into the community. When we talk about the expungement, that isn't free. This is an opportunity for us to put that back, some of those dollars back into the community. I got a request today. We're going to buy some headsets for one of the elementary schools. This gives us an opportunity to put that money back into the community. And so I think I would look at this and simply suggest that let the work I've done speak for me. Let the life that I've lived speak for me.
Okay. Okay, Dr. King, I get you. And I was going to go back to say, though, so my question wasn't for you to say anything about your candidate negative. I basically asked for a positive attribute that you would attribute to him, because he has served you in the NAACP under your presidency. So that's fine.
One of the things I guess I would suggest to you there is that when we elect the president, or we elect vice presidents or treasury or secretaries or whatever the case may be, they are all elected independently of the president. So it is not as if, I have a cabinet, if you will. What our bylaws gives me the authority to do as president is that I get to appoint individuals as chairs of committees, but I don't get to appoint the vice presidents. I don't get to appoint the treasurer. I don't get to appoint the secretaries. They are all independent of the president. Uh, and so that's kind of how I would leave that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So we're going to go to one of the questions that was basically reiterated in the comment section about Black economic empowerment. Mm-hmm. So please explain, what does that mean to you as the president of the NAACP San Antonio branch?
Right. A couple of things. Number one, it means giving Black folks the opportunity to pool their wealth, if you will, in order to purchase and to use resources that are within the community. The other thing that it does is that it gives them, the Black community, the opportunity to generate wealth. And so with business opportunities. And so we work very closely with many of the organizations. We work closely with organized labor. We work closely with other groups that are looking for business opportunities as well as employment. We don't always want to think of Black people being employees. Okay. We want to think of them as being the employers. And so what we want to do is ensure that we try to create an environment. We want the city, we want the county to look at their disparity studies and to ensure, and if you look at both of them, you will find that Black contractors are on the short end of that stick. And so we want to address that with the county. We want to address that with the city to ensure that we have more Black companies that are being recognized and used within the not within the African American community, but within the city of San Antonio.
Okay. So when we're looking at like the Freedom Fund dinner that happens helps you to do that fundraising of trying to get support to people who need it. One of the criticisms that we fielded the last time was this notion of a response time. So when someone goes through something, it seems as though there may be, and I'm just using what J. Maurice Gibbs said, he says that we've always had a problem with how do we respond and provide a response that's quick versus having to staff, and the question was staffing things up to headquarters. What things can you do locally that allows you to be able to make a local decision so that when you're looking at movements like the Black Lives Matter movement, where they're actually making decisions right, in the thrust of whatever they're going through, with your organization, with the NAACP, isn't there more layers that prevents you from being able to operate as quickly?
Yeah, we are a branch of a national organization. And so as a branch, we have a constitution, we have bylaws that we must abide by. I would disagree with J. Maurice that we have a slow response time. We can move pretty quickly. What we cannot do is that if it's what we would refer to as a direct action, and what a direct action is that were we to have a march or a protest, then we would need to notify the national office that we're going to engage in that march or that protest. But what we're able to do instead of that is that if there's a reason for us to have a march or protest, instead of going to what happens when that march and that protest is over. So what we will do is that we will go to the source of the problem. So if the city of San Antonio is the problem, then I simply pick up my cell phone and I'll call the mayor. If the county is the problem, then I do the same thing with the county judge. And in many cases, we're able to resolve those problems without going to the screens. And we can do that on a dime. We can do that on a dime. If there's a problem with police brutality, I call the police chief and say, I have this complaint. If we're to have a rally or a protest, then that creates where yes, we need to go to the to our national office. Now, does that give us a slower response time? No, it doesn't. It simply suggests a different type of response.
Yes. So, Dr. Hudspeth, I would also say that maybe there is a perception that even with our elected officials that happen to be in law enforcement. So I remember seeing a Zoom event that was actually hosted by the Bexar County Sheriff's Office with the NAACP as participants, but it was actually an NAACP event that was being streamed by the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. And so when we're looking at when elected officials use our NAACP or our African American churches, do you think that runs a conflict? Because when there's things that happen in those very departments where they make mistakes, I'm referencing in my mind Tara Hunter, the assistant principal who was arrested most recently and was deemed to be a criminal by the sheriff on public news, and it did not pan out to be that way. The charges were dropped, and her record is being expunged, and she's been restored. But again, there was no apology that was even provided to the family. And I'm just saying that when she reached out to the NAACP for help, she didn't feel like she gotten it. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. And what occurs here is that we have a legal redress committee, and the NAACP is an organization of committees. And so it depends upon the question that is being asked on what we can do and what we cannot do. One of the things that is true is that we are not attorneys. And so if we cannot file lawsuits, we cannot provide legal representation. And so what we can do is that we can try to meet with individuals to find out, what their issues are and how we can help resolve them. What we can do is that we are not and cannot and will never be all things to all people. You just simply can't do that. There are some things, for instance, there are some things that we can do. I regret that she didn't feel as if she received the assistance. I think what happened in her particular case is that when we found out about it, the things had already started turning. So there was really very little for us to do at that particular point in time. But I'm sorry if that's the way she feels.
So one question that was just put into our chat is the response time for someone who has a problem.
I would say it depends on what the problem is, and it would be pretty instant. For instance, if someone says, well, I was abused by the police, then we have a complaint form that the individual needs to complete that complaint form, give it to us, and then we move on. I would say, within a day or so, but sometimes it doesn't take that long. Once we get the complaint form in front of us, the challenge we have sometimes is that people do not want to put things in complaint forms. And so that becomes, a barrier for some. But we need to do that. If we're going to speak on someone's behalf, then we need to ensure that we're not held liable, if you will, for that engagement, that we need to ensure that they've given us permission to do that. And sometimes we had this, for instance, give you another example. Harlandale Independent School District decided to drop Martin Luther King's birthday as a holiday. I wrote a letter on behalf of the NAACP to the Harlandale Independent School District. At their next board meeting, they reversed their particular decision. We didn't have to do anything else with that. And that was pretty, it happened within, a month. But with regard to the school district and making school board decisions, that's the way it occurs, So I could say, the response time depending upon the issue.
Mm-hmm. So one question that came as a follow-up So are you able to advocate for an injustice even if the person has an attorney?
No, we're not. We're not. If a person has an attorney, then what we can do is that we need to work with that attorney, but we cannot advocate independently of that person's attorney.
Okay. So, so what are your parting comments and encouragement? Because this is the power of the vote. And also, I know that you're always trying to get new members. And look, I have my silver life, right? So what do you say to people who you want them to be financially responsible and a part of the NAACP?
I guess I would suggest to them that being a member of the NAACP is a chance for them to enhance the power of the organization, but also their power as well. Because when you are a member of the NAACP, you get to determine who the leaders are of the association. And you may want to become one of the leaders of the association. One of the things that I would always want to do, teacher by profession, we want to train the individuals who are going to come after us. What I tell the young folks we're bringing into the NAACP is that we're not passing the torch, but we're lighting the torch. We want to bring folks in to show them what they need and how to do it so that we can back out. So that's really where we are. We want members, but more than members, we want action. We don't want just names. We have a lot of names. We have 700 some odd names. What we need are workers, people who are coming in and roll up their sleeve and say, how can I make a difference? How can we make this a better place?
So when are the voting, when is voting taking place?
It will take place next Thursday, November the 10th, November the 10th, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 4 p.m. And it will be using Election Buddy. Election Buddy is the format that is used by our national office.
And only the people who are paid members of the NAACP can vote in your election. And also at the same time, we have the citywide elections that are occurring
That Tuesday.
Right.
Their election, the city elections are on Tuesday, our elections on Thursday.
So it's all very, very important. The power of your vote is very important.
And let me go back to that, to our midterm election, because if folks do not vote, if we choose to stay at home, if we say, well, what are they doing for me? And so I'm not going to vote, then, the thing about a democracy is that you get the government you deserve when you choose not to vote. And so we need everyone to get out and cast his or her vote. But don't look for that immediate gratification from that politician. You're not going to necessarily get that. But when they know you're going to vote on election day, they will come through, because they want that vote at the end of the day.
So they will come through, but also, as you said, we shouldn't expect anything because it's a delayed gratification.
It is delayed gratification. Absolutely, it is. It's delayed gratification. So be patient. Cast your vote. Cast your vote. Make demands. Here's what we're looking for. You make the demands. Here's why I'm voting for you. You make the demands. But we know we're not going to overturn decisions that were previously put in place. And so give us a little time. Give them a little time in order to make that happen.
So just, as we close, going back to the Black contractors in San Antonio,
Sure.
Are there any provisions that Black contractors have that will allow them to be able to do more within the overall city spend? Because I know that, that we've always seen where our companies are treated like subs and not as the GC. So, I mean, at some point, and I'm just looking at this Black economic empowerment, we have to demand, or we have to be so bold in saying to our city that our contractors deserve to be GCs.
Absolutely. And Commissioner Cavett has an excellent idea on how to make that happen, because where we find our Black contractors in trouble is that they have difficulty with the bonding. And so there has to be an effort, a collected effort, if you will, to put together a fund for which these Black contractors can pull from in order to assist them with their bonding. That's really the issue that we have with the Black contractors right now. Not that they can't do the work; it's simply they can't get the financial resources to get the jobs.
Okay, and someone in the audience said that bonding is just insurance, but
it is. It's just it's insurance, but you have to have it. you have to have it, and so we need to ensure that they have that, so that that's not a prerequisite or that's not a hurdle that we put up there in front of them in order to keep them from becoming those general contractors instead of just the subcontractors.
So maybe one of the promises, Dr. Hudspeth, moving forward and after the elections is if we make headway and regardless of whether you or J. Maurice Gibbs is elected, love to have you come back on the show to talk about, and maybe we invite the city's manager, Eric Walsh, to sit down and talk about how do we enable African-American contractors to be able to do more within the city of San Antonio.
Absolutely. And don't leave the county out of that either, but you're absolutely correct.
No, and I agree. Bexar County Commissioner Tommy Calvert has been really pushing the envelope as much as he can. And it's good that he's working with the NAACP. And we need to see how we can encourage the current councilman in District 2, because that's where your house, that's where your headquarters is, to do more with the NAACP as well. But we will, again, I thank you for your time today.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you.
And may everything work well for you and for our community. The NAACP is a historically African-American organization. Sometimes people get it twisted with the people of color reference, but I want you to know today that we're thankful for you as the president of the organization, and we hope you the best. And we also hope the best for J. Maurice Gibbs.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
All right. This is Christopher Herring with TAN TV. This is, you can find me at Twitter at Black America, Twitter at Black America. I'd love to hear your response to many of the things in which we talked about today. Again, thank you for tuning in to TAN TV. This is where you have a local reach and a global feel. Again, thank you so much.